Welcome back to Morning Express on this 21st day of June 2016. It's time for Person of Interest, which is what we normally have on a Tuesday. This morning, our guest is none other than the former Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, Gladys Boss Shollei. Good to have you and good morning.
Good morning, Michael.
You're well?
Very well, thank you.
Fantastic.
Thanks for having
good
me.
to have you. And on Person of Interest, we like to find out who the person is, even, behind the news and where they grew up from, and just put that human feel to the person. Because sometimes you're so entangled in just seeing this person in the news. But where did you grow up from, and maybe the schools you attended while in your younger days?
I grew up in Wasingishu County most of my life. A bit of Nandi County at the beginning, and then later my parents moved off to a farm and we lived there, still in Wasingishu County.
Still in Wasingishu?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What were your dreams as you were growing up? What did you envision yourself to become?
I mean, like all kids, I think it kept changing from time to time.
Yes.
But I know at some point I loved watching LA Law, so I wanted to be a lawyer. Yes.
Okay. And what exactly did you want to pursue?
I wanted to be a courtroom lawyer. I loved the drama and everything. Of course, as soon as I finished university, I realized I didn't want to be a courtroom lawyer. Yeah.
Okay. So at that point, what did you want to become?
I decided, at that time, the whole environmental issues was coming up. So I decided to go and study maritime environment law in Cape Town.
Okay.
So I had an LLM in maritime environment law. And after that, I worked for United Nations. That was my first job. And my thesis was on the Regional Seas program that was being run by the United Nations Environment Program. And after my research, they liked my paper and they hired me.
Okay.
Yes.
And how did you end up now, moving from UN to, as it were, working for government?
No, I think my life something always happened by default, and then I ended up somewhere else. So when I was at the UN, I was posted to Bangkok. And then I had a young baby. I was newly married. So I made the decision not to go. But then I tried to apply for a similar post within Nairobi. And at that time, there was the Law of the Sea program, which was starting at the University of Nairobi, which was a Belgium-funded, UN-funded program. So I went there. So I joined the university not because I wanted to teach, but because I wanted to run the program. But once the program was over, I was asked to go and teach. Then I started teaching at the university. Okay. And before I knew it, I saw there was a Kenya Law Reports was advertising for a position of editor, and we hadn't had law reports for 20 years. Having taught at the university, I saw students saying, in the unreported case of so-and-so, and they'd make up the facts. So I knew we really needed law reports. So when I saw the advert, I said, okay, I'll take the job. And so I did that. Of course, at that time, my husband thought it was a bad career move. Because
why did you think that?
Because there was an income drop.
Okay.
Yes, sir. But it turned out to be the most exciting time of my life, too. So I went there, and before I knew it, I was editor and CEO. And suddenly, I moved away from being a pure lawyer to being more an administrator, manager, financial manager. And it was during that time that I decided to study for my MBA. So. Okay.
So that became a development. Now, at the time you probably joined the judiciary, was a time where there was a time civil servants were viewed as not a very good job, especially given that now you are in the UN. What gave you the courage to actually consider, especially having worked in a multinational?
I think I've always wanted to do jobs that I had a passion for and loved. It was never about money for me. And so it was very easy for me to just go to Kenya Law Reports and earn 70,000 shillings.
Was that your first pay when you were there?
No. I was earning thousands of dollars in the UN. But, I think for me, it was more that I wanted to do it so badly, I could have done it for free. And up to now, I still have things that I say, I'm so happy to do, I'll do them for free.
You'll do them for free.
Yes.
What is your passion? Because I know that normally is a cliche in terms of when you're telling somebody to do, look for a job or look for something they do. We always say look for your passion. But of course, there has to be a financial or something that sort of satisfies you as a person.
No, I think I'm lucky that I haven't been the breadwinner in my family. So that has been helpful also. So it's not that everybody can do it.
Risks and,
yes. So I can take the risks, and I've been lucky in that regard. But I think for me, I always look at myself as a construction worker. I like going to a place where nothing is working and it needs to be fixed and rebuilt. So most places I've gone, I mean, if If you look at Kenya Law Reports, I built it from scratch. You know, it was a startup state corporation to a fully fledged state corporation, which eventually won international awards. When I went to the university, I had the challenge of I wanted the moot court, the university students to be at the moot court competitions in Washington, D.C. and go for the World Cup, you know, and we did that. So for me, I like to do something, I like to bring something from nothing to something.
And build it up. Okay,
yes,
all right, we'll get to...
And right now I'm getting to rebuild my life too.
How are you doing that?
No, I'm looking around for my next new thing. Yeah, and I'm considering many options.
Many options.
But
we'll
for me, it has to tick.
It has to tick. We'll come to that shortly, because I know there are even some questions that are coming via Twitter regarding your future, but we'll come to that. And there's some pictures that we had previously, and I'd just like you to take us through them, because, of course, those are some of the things that remind us that you also grew up like everybody else. And, of course, for those young girls who look up to you and possibly feel that, wow, how do I get there? It gives them a point of reference, which they can do. So, Director, we can have some of those pictures, and maybe you can run us through them as she was growing up. I'm sure we'll have them coming up in just a few seconds. You're going to see them right there on the screen.
Which one, that one?
Well, not quite. Well, this was during the inauguration of the president. Run us through this and how this felt. I remember seeing you and thinking, wow, you did a grand job.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a big challenge. I had nothing to learn from, and there wasn't a precedent for it. And so we had to come up with the entire, program, exactly the words to say, etc. But eventually everyone said it went well, and I'm glad that it did. What
was the mood within the organizing committee? Because I know for generally Kenyans, it was almost a time that we felt it was a revolution.
Yes.
Yeah. What was the mood that was going on within the organizing committee?
I think there was a lot of excitement in the country. But then there was also the challenge of the Assumption into Office Committee was the first one ever. We had never had a situation like that, where everything was set in law in what we should do. But then also there were many players in the Assumption into Office Committee, and some people wanted to do it the old-fashioned way, and others wanted to look at other ways. But I remember what I did is I looked at inaugurations all over the world. So I checked Australia, I checked the US, I checked South Africa, checked Ghana, etc. And sort of we came up with a hybrid of it. So you find that there were some things that were dealt with by the military, but there were certain things that were within my office, which is exactly how to undertake the actual inauguration itself, the actual swearing in. So, thank God for the internet. So we came with a hybrid one. Yes,
okay.
Yes.
So nobody literally took you through, this is what we're going to go through. Did you have to do that yourself? Because you seem to literally, it's like you had done this several times before.
It was the inauguration part that I was concerned with. There were other parts that were dealt with by other people. So everybody had a different role to play, but the actual swearing in, which was the law, which was required of me by law, is what I did deal with. Yes,
okay.
Yes.
All right. So it would be accurate to say it was a very exciting time for you as a person.
Very exciting time.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
I'm sure
and I love a challenge.
It must have taken a lot of your energy and time also from your family at that time.
Yes.
How did you manage to balance at that time?
I always tell people there's no something as balance. It just balances. When you have to do what you have to do, you somehow survive it, and everybody in the family survives it. Maybe we pay a little price here and there, but...
But how does it just balance? I mean, here I'm looking at a wife and a mother, but also the whole country literally looking to you to execute something that has not been done before. Yeah. How did you manage that?
I know sometimes being in Kasarani until 2 in the morning, but I think what happened is that I've always done this. I walk my family through what I'm going through, and we discuss it. So they know at every minute, what's happening, Mom? Okay, I have to be in Kasarani. Oh, what's happening there? And I explain it. So I think as long as your family know what you're doing and what's happening, they sort of support you because they realize what the challenge is. Yes, and I think the problem is when they don't actually know what you're going through. So sometimes when I thought I couldn't wake up in the morning, it was, and immediately, I think, after the inauguration, the following day, I left for the farm alone.
Okay.
Because I just needed time off.
Time off.
So I left my family in Nairobi and went down.
So I guess
rested.
Once in a while, it's good to just pull away and just have time alone.
Yes, I needed those 2 days to rest before they also came back to the farm.
All right, let's look at some of the pictures coming through. And there we have you. That was your graduation?
Yes, that's Cape Town.
Oh, in Cape Town.
Yes.
What had you acquired there?
My LLM.
Okay.
Master of Laws.
How long ago was that?
I graduated in 1994. Yes, I was in Cape Town, 93. Yeah, and then part of 94, yes.
Okay. And while you were in Cape Town, by that in 1990, by then you were not, were you married then?
No, I was not married. I was married at the end of that year.
At the end of that year?
Yeah, December that year when I got back.
So how did you meet your husband?
I met him while I was at university through a friend. But it was actually his idea for me to go to Cape Town because his head office was there. At that time. So.
Now, I don't want to get myself into trouble.
Yes.
But was he the one who made the first move, or did you?
In terms of meeting?
Yes. You know, now for the relationship
He's a very persistent
to develop.
person. Yes, yes, yes. When I first met him, people used to tell me, is that your boyfriend? I said, no, he's too old, you know. So, you know, when you're 19 and somebody's 29, you think, they're about to die.
All right, there's another picture there, and where is that?
That is in Moi Girls, Eldoret.
Okay.
Yes, that's my high school with my still very best friend there in the middle.
Okay.
Yes.
And who is
Actually,
that?
I was at her wedding last year. I was her best mate.
Oh, okay. Wow, wonderful. You've kept those
Yes.
high school friendships still running. And I'm sure from the clarity of the picture, you may not be able to tell who exactly.
You know, those days we didn't have digital cameras. You have to remember that.
Yes,
eh?
yes.
So when you asked me about all these photos, I was trying to scan them, and I was like, okay. I knew I had them somewhere on iCloud, but I couldn't find them.
Yeah, but, and just off the record, I think I qualified you now as a qualified photographer. The initial pictures you sent me, we could not use them, but after a few instructions, she was able to get them going. Let's move on to the next slide and just capture that. Oh, what's happening there?
That's our wedding.
Oh, that's your wedding?
That's our wedding. So that's in the evening when they put the traditional clothes on top of my beautiful gown, you know. But it was fun.
But it was fun.
We had
you
to have the
enjoyed it.
villagers have a day,
Okay.
you know.
Where did you get married? Was it in Nairobi or
Yes,
country?
in Nairobi.
Okay.
Oh, yes, and the entire village came.
The entire village is here. Okay, we also have another picture of your wedding, but I'm sure we'll be able to see that if we can move on to the next picture. And yeah, it must have been a very colorful event.
It was fun. I had fun.
You enjoyed yourself.
Yes, yes.
Wow, this must be back in the day.
Yeah, those are my two best friends in high school, in secondary school.
Okay, are you still in touch with them?
My friend on the other side in blue is late now.
Ah, okay.
But Sharon Wamburi lives in she lives now in Israel. She moved to Israel. But we grew up in Eldoret together.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
wow,
yes,
fantastic. And this was now in what, high school?
Yeah, this is in, I think we must have been in Form 2, maybe Form 3.
Okay.
Yes, yes,
All right.
yes, yes. And those are my best friends ever.
And I must say that you have actually not changed that much in terms of, I mean, it's easy to identify who you are right there. But
I used to be 45 kilos though, but...
you've still managed to maintain a very slim figure. How many children do you have?
3.
3 children after, and I think you're doing a good job. You'll tell us how, as we move on to the next picture, how do you keep fit?
I run.
You run?
Yes,
okay.
I'm a marathon runner.
Wow, okay. And
true to my roots, right?
Yes, exactly. Now, there's the wedding picture, and, and wonderful. Where was this?
The wedding was in Utali College.
Ah, okay.
The reception was at Utali College, and then we were married at St. Francis Karen, the ACK church.
And I can see the pictures are from back in the day, the ones that you had to have the flowers on the dress.
Yes,
and,
I know,
you know,
exactly.
that traditional look, and we can see there.
When I look at that, I think how posh weddings have become now, and they worry too much about them. I didn't.
Yeah, well, the times have changed, and it's become another form of income for many others, and it's become very, very commercialized. I don't know if we have another picture that we can move on to, but yeah, how long ago was this? This was 1990?
21 years ago.
21 years ago.
It's gonna be 22 in December.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. There we go. There you're with the president of the United States, but definitely not as president.
No, he was a senator when he came to Kenya.
Okay. And do you remember maybe some of the discussions that you had with him?
Yes. When I said I was the editor of the Kenya Law Reports, he said he was the editor of the Harvard Law Review, and I said the Kenya Law Reports is better. Wow. So the next day he remembered that I'd insulted the Harvard Law Review, and I was quite surprised that he remembered.
That he remembered that.
He has a good memory. Maybe that's why he's a good politician.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And now that both of you somehow had the same position at one point, do you think you'll be president one day?
There's no, you can't.
You never say never.
Never rule it out.
Never say never. All right, let's move on to the next picture, and. That, of course, with the senator then. Wow, this is now going really back to the day.
Yes, yes, yes. That's me with my grandmother. Those are my grandparents. My grandmother is now late. My grandfather is still alive, over 100 years old, in amazing shape.
Wow.
Yes.
Over 100 years.
Yes, that's Muse Boss now.
Okay. I guess now we see where the genes come from.
My parents are there and my uncles and aunties. Yes, yes.
Okay.
It was the oldest picture I had in my house of me as a kid. The rest are in my parents' house.
Where are you on that picture?
That is at my grandfather's place.
Are you the one next to your granddad?
Yes, my grandmother.
Oh, to
the
your
shorter one.
the one
that's my
that's
older
looking
sister,
to your right.
Yes, yes.
Okay, with white socks.
Yes,
I can see that fashion for you has always been something that you've maintained.
My parents put me in a good start.
Okay. All right. So then I think that those are the pictures, and thank you for sharing that.
Let me not see anymore.
Thank you for sharing that bit of your life. But looking at now how you developed and came into the position that you took later on, how did that transition happen from multinational to now coming into the judiciary?
Okay, remember by the time I went to the judiciary, I had been at the Electoral Commission. Yes, I'd been CEO of a state corporation, then deputy CEO at the Electoral Commission, then came into the judiciary. So like I said, when I was at Kenya Law Reports, I interacted a lot with, with the judiciary and the judges, and Justice Gisheru was chairman of my board at that time. I served under Chunga. So I think I sort of had an interaction with the judiciary, and I knew all the problems that they had and things that needed to be fixed. But then I remember after 2007 happened, I remember looking at what elections could do to Kenya. And it's one of the things I said, this election was so badly run. It was the statements of the then chairman, God bless his soul, Kivuitu, that actually was careless. And so, I thought about it and I said, I'll apply. I had never worked in elections at all, had no clue what elections was all about. But at that time, they wanted to make sure that no one who has ever worked in elections would be qualified, because they wanted a fresh team. And we got there. And I remember when I was interviewed, Hamed Isaac asked me, if you became the deputy CEO, okay, I was interviewed actually for CEO, but later persuaded to take deputy CEO. And he asked me, if you became CEO, what would you do different? I said, you will never make the statements. If I'm CEO, you will never make the statements as chairman that Kivuitu made. Yeah, and I think that's where we clicked.
That's where you clicked. All right, now looking at, now that that has come up, looking at the elections and what we are currently going through as a country with the IEBC, where do you think the problem is?
I think the problem about election management is that it is a position of trust. It doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong. If people don't trust you, that's it. And that becomes a very big problem, because even when the results delay a bit and people start getting nervous, that's enough to trigger violence,
emotion,
yes, and emotion. And you could see that, in fact, if you look at the build-up with the whole thing about Kivuitu, it was the build-up where people were saying something funny is happening, something funny is happening. People got suspicious, and within no time, and that's back. So you must make sure that as an electoral commission, you go into elections with complete trust of Kenyans, so that even if you're running out of time, if you're delaying, if you mess up a little, they still believe in you and will give you the opportunity to finish the work.
So do you think that right now the opposition has a point, a valid point, should I say, regarding
And I think it's not just the opposition. I think most Kenyans don't trust the Electoral Commission at the moment. And I think what should have been, instead of focusing on saying we're not going home and we won't leave and etc., I think they should have been focusing in engaging all the stakeholders to try and win back their trust. If we had spent the last 6 months doing that, I think we wouldn't have a problem now.
Okay. Now, you've talked about a position of trust, and of course, that's one that you have maintained and said previously that you're one that works with integrity. However, there was certain allegations made against you, and this was more to do with procurement. And maybe we can just have a little bit of some of the statements that you made, then we can take it from there. And this is now, of course, as you are Chief Registrar of the Judiciary.
Okay. I have nothing to hide. I do not wish to say anything in camera. I prefer to speak in public. I have never been a coward in my life, and I will not begin now. If there is anything I need to say, I can say it in public. For me, that is very important. So it's a question of integrity. If I can say something about somebody, I should be able to say it in public. I don't believe in saying it in the back room. Like I said, I, of course, realized that, like I said, I toyed with the way, whether I should come here, what I should say and not say. But eventually I told myself, I've been stripped in public. My reputation has been taken away from me. I'm not worried about the position of Chief Registrar. I am worried about my reputation, which I will work very hard to restore. I'd rather lose the job, but regain my reputation. That for me is very important. Hence the reason why I'm being very honest with you here in this meeting. I have nothing to lose. They've destroyed me. And so I will not lie about it, because this is something that I can always confirm anytime. On the issue, I think, which Honorable Neto and the others asked, I mean, do I have issues with some of the commissioners? It's public knowledge that Commissioner Ahmed Nasir, I've had difficult relations with him in the last several months. And yes, about the whole issue about the Mombasa building, yes. I did mention to him as chair of the finance committee that I didn't realize that the building was the LSK told you about this building. You didn't tell me about it. Then he said, "Oh, forget about that one. Takutafutia ingine." He also, and after that, immediately he told me that. A few hours later, I walked to the Chief Justice's office. I told the Chief Justice exactly what was said, because I'm an honest person. Thereafter also, I raised it in one of the meetings with my infrastructure team that, Commissioner Ahmed Nasir says there's another building. But for me, it was passing, because I did not want, I always say if there's something that is not right, I have to say it. It could be that, I don't know. And then I know I do have issues with Commissioner Warsame. Commissioner Warsame has constantly taunted me about hiring people. And in fact, one time he told me, "We are tujakula matunda ya uhuru ya kazi yako. You've never hired anybody for me." Mrs. Ocheng used to hire 30 people for me whenever I wanted. I have nothing to hide. I do not wish to say anything in camera. I prefer to speak in public. I have never been a coward in my life, and I will not begin.
So yeah, there are several things you bring out there, and first of all, one of the things that at that point you really wanted to defend was your reputation. Do you think your reputation has been maintained?
Yes, I think so, because I meet a lot of people. I travel around the country, and many people do not believe, except a small clique of people, many people do not believe those things that are against me. But also, if anybody is honest enough and has looked even at the charges, remember they said I stole 5 billion, then it came down to 2 billion, then it came down to 1.2 billion. Then finally it came down to no money was lost. And that has been confirmed by the public accounts, by the Auditor General. In fact, it is for the first time that Parliament has gone beyond the Auditor General's report. In fact, I think it was during the time when Honorable Khalwale was chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, and they made it clear that they cannot go beyond the Auditor General's report. In fact, I have not been charged with corruption, and I have not been charged with fraud or losing any money.
But okay? Misappropriation and a flaunting...
It's not misappropriation.
Flaunting procurement processes. For instance, okay, one of the charges that is against you was increasing the deposit, I think, to team sales from 10% to 50%.
Okay, let me explain to you. I think I'm glad you asked that question, Michael, because first of all, you must remember that when they say that I've been charged with flaunting procurement procedures, one of the questions my lawyers have asked, tell me which procedure. How do I flaunt a procedure I don't apply? I don't sit in the tender committee, so there is no time that I'm even applying procurement procedures in the first place. So, and that is one of the questions. Why do you think the case has never proceeded? They can't provide the documents. When they say that I varied the documents from a deposit of 10% to 50%, what we have asked, and it is the last thing, remember the court has put them on notice for the last time, they've been given one more chance to produce the document. And I said, kindly give me that particular tender document that shows 10% and the one that I varied that shows 50%. The reason why they have not produced it up to now, it's because it actually does not exist and reads 50%.
So I mean, they have it. That was a fabrication? It's a fabrication, and it's going to come out very clearly. You did not vary from 10% to 50%.
Michael, if it was not a fabrication, why have I asked, give me the evidence against me as I am allowed by law? Show me that document of 10% and show me the document of 50%. You know what, the last two court sessions that we had, and I think the media wasn't fair about it, what they should have actually have written is the investigator, the ESCC investigator was put on the dock. I wasn't on the dock. He was asked, you're supposed to provide the evidence to the accused person so they can defend themselves. Twice he failed. He was given another 2 weeks. He failed again. In fact, the last meeting that was in court, my lawyers told the court, there's no point to keep bringing Gladys to court if the documents are not there. So it was agreed that my lawyers would meet with the EFCC lawyers in court, confirm the documents are there, then call me for a hearing. I am not afraid of the hearing. And believe me, I have always said that when history is written, my case shall be used to show how you must not fight corruption. I don't sit in the tender committee, I've said that. Other officers have said I don't sit in the tender committee and they've gotten away with it.
You may not sit in the tender committee, but possibly you're in a position of influence.
No, I don't make a decision.
Where you're able, but
the only thing I do as the accounting officer is once the tender is awarded, I then sign the contract as per the tender. The law requires that I am not permitted to actually vary or change anything that the tender committee does. So I don't sit, I'm not allowed to interfere with it. I signed the contract after the tender was awarded. In fact, the job of every accounting officer is to sign the to sign the contract once the tender is awarded. So are you telling me that they're going to put all the accounting officers in court?
So the decision maker in this case, if that be true, then would be the one to be held accountable.
Yes, and GSC made a decision. And the tender committee made a decision. Gladys Boss Shollei did not make a decision anywhere. In fact, the decisions were made by the finance committee of JSC. It was moved at the full JSC by Hamed Nasir as the chairman of the finance committee. That JSC approved it. And in fact, Parliament has confirmed through the Auditor General's report that the decision was made by... So actually, if there's anybody who didn't make a decision in this issue, was me.
It was you. So was there a change from 10% to 50%?
No, there wasn't.
There was no change whatsoever,
there was no
whether
change.
by the tender committee or yourself?
Yes, there was none.
One of the other accusations against you is awarding Team Sales construction of Runyenjes Court without tender committee approval. Is that true?
No, I did not award Team Sales Mavoko. The Team Sales had been awarded Mavoko Law Courts to build. Eventually, the property was not surrendered by the government. The tender committee varied the site to Runyenjes. And in fact, they did it with the approval of the Public Procurement Oversight Authority. They wrote to the Public Oversight Authority, Procurement Oversight Authority, said, are we permitted to vary a site? They got a letter back in writing saying you may vary the site provided the specifications and the price does not change. So how can that be an offense? I mean, it just needed to take somebody at the DPP's office or EFCC to look at that document. Okay. So if this be the case, if what you're saying is absolutely correct and true, how come then it was so difficult to prove it then? And on what grounds were you fired? No, because by the way, I was not charged. I was fired long before I was charged. You know that? Yes, correct. Yeah. And if you remember, I appeared before the JSC, apparently for this hearing. I asked them, give me an extension of time to file my response. They said no. Nevertheless, I filed the response. And then, and remember Article 50 of the Constitution and Article 47 of the Constitution, they're very clear about fair administrative action and also a fair hearing, a right to fair hearing. You should have time. You should have time to call your witnesses, time to question your witnesses, etc. So I should have had the hearing. When I got there, we asked for reclusion of some of the members and asked for some an ability to have it in camera, I mean in public. I wanted it had in public, and I wanted to be able to call witnesses. And I challenged the bias of 2 of the members. And what happened at that time? They said it is denied. So we asked for a ruling, as the law is, because I'm allowed to challenge that decision of the Judicial Service Commission in a court of law. What they did is, as soon as we walked out to go to the High Court, they fired me. Okay. So you would say it was unfair dismissal? Yes, it's an unfair dismissal. Okay. Yes. Are you going to petition against that? Are you going to seek compensation for that? It's going through the court system now. It's going through the court system. I won the case at the High Court. Okay. The High Court awarded me full compensation for violation of my constitutional rights, and then and said that the court should, this JSC should have listened. Should have taken cognizance of Article 50 and 47 of the Constitution and Article 236, which says that a public officer cannot be removed from office without due process. So that went, and then when it went to the Court of Appeal reversed the decision. And what was interesting, in their decision in a nutshell, what they said is that this was a quasi-judicial body, therefore it does not require to have the threshold of the Constitution. That is ridiculous. Even a chicken thief has to be arrested in accordance with the Constitution. So for me, I was shocked that the very high court in the land could rule in that favor. The case is still in the court system.
Okay. All right, we'll not comment much on that, especially given that it's still going through the court system. But now, after
let me correct you on something. A lot of the media people keep on saying that you can't mention a case because it's in court. Sub judice is when you discuss the merits and demerits of the case. If you're not discussing the merits and demerits of the case, what you discuss is in public record. So I think people gag yourself too much.
Okay. All right, point noted.
So in future, I keep on hearing it and I keep saying, why did I say this?
Noted. Now you said, and I quote, this is after, some of the cases came out. You said, and I quote, after the cases are over, EACC will collapse because of its incompetence. What do you mean by that? Because
what's going to happen is, it's very easy to charge someone and take them to court. Because basically what you're telling the person is, you have no choice, I have to charge you, I will plead, whatever, but it's only when the hearing starts. Remember my case, not a single witness has been called yet. We have not started. We are on the preliminaries of give me the documents, give us a document. They even had the audacity to give us a blank tender document. And I remember the magistrate actually reprimanded them. So the issue is, it will all come full cycle when all the documentation has been tabled in court. Already, EACC has been reprimanded by another court. Recently, the charges, which are exactly like mine, were quashed. You can't tell someone that you flaunted procurement procedures. You must tell me which section. It tantamount to telling me that I'm charging you for a traffic offense, but you must say, traffic offense contrary to the Traffic Act, the traffic offense of obstruction, reckless driving, overspeeding, something. But I can't just tell you, you are driving, so you must have committed a traffic offense.
There must have been something that
surely. That is the minimum we expect of EACC.
Okay. Be as it may, then what was the reason for your being hounded down? I remember you were in Canada at the time when there was a meeting in Mombasa, and you almost literally had to cut short your trip because there was all this happening. What do you think was the genesis of
it was a whole plot and it was a whole plan, and I think all the emails are public knowledge. They are on the internet. And by the way, do you know you can track emails with precision to the exact computer that it came from and the location that it was sent from.
The IP address.
So the thing is, once I raised that issue, had I been allowed to have the full trial that I asked JSC to do, we would have asked Google. And we are going to eventually ask in court anyway. We are going to ask Google to confirm that those emails are actually authentic. So for me, when you look at the judgment of JSC really, and I think now there is a new JSC, these were the old JSC, the sad part was, recently, the same JSC says, just because Justice Tunoi is alleged by a fake NIS report to have had communication with a certain Mr. Kiplagat, that was sufficient to set up a tribunal. When I presented the documents to JSC, which are documents that can be actually confirmed, and there's actually a US Supreme Court decision, which was against Google, which clearly said, Google said that once an email goes to more than one person, it's already public knowledge. It can be, yes, privacy is gone. Right. So the issue is, why the change? This was something that can be confirmed. They could rely on a fake report and not rely on real documents that can be authenticated with precision.
Okay, so in your opinion, from where you're seated, what was the real reason why they were hounding you down? Was it a succession issue?
I don't know if it was a succession issue at that time, but I know that from the emails that I read, the CJ was told by his war counsel that I have eclipsed him. Yeah, that I'm taking away his legacy, that I was I was more visible than him, etc. And definitely more competent, I know that now.
That you are more competent than him.
Yes. So I think,
come to that.
And I think a lot of people at that time, people always ask me this question, but is it because you were too powerful? I said, of course I was too powerful. And the reason I was powerful is there was a vacuum. You had an absent Chief Justice, and at that time we didn't have a Deputy CJ. So he was hardly at work. I mean, everybody, you can all check when he goes to work and doesn't go to work. So I mean, it was almost impossible for me not to feel that vacuum. Yes. Okay, it wasn't deliberate on my part, but it did happen because there was a vacuum.
So you say that you are more competent than him. Validate that. Why? Why do you think?
I know that. I mean, I've seen the tragedy of errors he has made now.
What are those? Now that he has left office, what are some of those things that you would highlight and say that these were errors that possibly you would have done differently and better?
No, I think if we all worked together and he agreed to work with everybody, then everybody would have done a better job. But he spent so much energy fighting people. Yeah, he was always fighting shadows. Remember, under his tenure, he fired all the directors. Under his tenure, soon after I left, he fired all the directors. He fired anybody who seemed to have been around me. In fact, they had an email saying that anybody who stood behind me. Remember, my team stood behind me when I made the last statements before I left. And he said, and they said that everybody who was behind her must go. And they did that. And they had a whole strategy of fire so-and-so, transfer so-and-so, intimidate so-and-so, terrorize so-and-so. I mean, it's ridiculous that someone so senior could get to the level of looking for people who are even younger than his own children. And for me, and I think another thing is, you saw the advert that was in the media the other day, and he writes there completed projects, okay? And of course, it's all colorful and looks very nice, that it looks like that, you know, he started those courts and completed them under the transformation framework. Most of those courts were done, some of them were done under Justice Gisheru, others started under just the former registrar, others. So most of those were picked up. We found them already there. I think it's misleading to try and take credit for it. I mean, and at that time, it was very hard work to even start building a court, considering that they used to have a very small budget. And then other courts that he says that they have commissioned, it's just a photograph of the architect's description of it. So, for example, there was a court that had been started in Lodwar that was supposed to be built over a period of years. What has happened now in Lodwar? They are using, I think, some government building for the judge to sit there and be able to hear cases. Yet they have left a building that is stalled, and government money had been voted for it. The same thing in Marsabit, the same thing in Garsen, you know.
Okay,
they left stalled projects and then started now looking, either in other places, they are actually, what they're doing is what I call the Air Force One policy, which means that they put in a magistrate. When the High Court judge goes to a certain court, they actually move out the magistrate for the High Court.
One might say those are more or less, what would I call them? It's more of a dressing. But in terms of now his work as a CJ, there are those things that one can literally point out and say he has done a good job. For example, the number of cases that were pending before he took office and now have drastically reduced. The time in which that they're executed has drastically reduced. So one might say that maybe your angle is more from a personal difference with him as CJ as opposed to the execution of his work.
I think in terms of the number of cases that have reduced, that is for sure that the number of cases have drastically reduced. But you must remember also that a law was passed to increase the number of judges sitting on the High Court, yeah, and also at the Court of Appeal. So of course the number of disposal of cases has to increase. You move from 7 judges, I think, of the Court of Appeal to 16 and deployed them, and then they stopped doing the circuits, which was wasting time. Of course, it's reduced. That's definitely something that has in fact worked. Yeah, but also when you judge the legacy of a Chief Justice, or any judge for that matter, the judges are actually judged by their judgments. They speak through their judgments, not adverts in the newspaper. People should be able to read. When you think of some of the greatest Chief Justices that have ever been, Al Warren, yes, the Miranda rules, we still use them now. Anything you say, you know, can be held against, etc. Yes. And the School versus Brown, you know, separate but equal, remember? That was under Al Warren. If today I think of Al Warren, I think of those two. And you know, we're still using it today? And that was like in 1969 and etc. So that is how we remember judges. I think today, let's be fair, and I think history will judge this. It doesn't have to be coming from me. That day we watched their last ruling. Yeah? That is the image of the last judgment of the Chief Justice.
When he walked out of
when he walked out of Feroz Norji,
yes.
a very, very senior, well-respected lawyer. Believe me,
but
the first tenets of justice. No, but still, the first tenets of justice is I listen to you, even if I'll dismiss you. But I must listen to you. I owe you that. That's what justice means. Giving everyone their own, a chance to be heard. Just, and then after that you tell him, you know, Feroz, you're out of line or whatever. But have the decency. Don't storm out like a teenager, you know. And then also if you look at the judgments, the other judgment, the second last one, the one where there were the 5 bench. When you look at the 5 bench, I think the saddest part was you saw a court split in the middle. Yeah? And I want you one time to go read those judgments. Read who analyzed the law, who didn't analyze the law. Look at them. And you will be able to tell who is the brilliant Supreme Court judge there.
Between all of them. What do you make out of that division that we evidently saw, and many Kenyans were left agape wondering whether we have a judiciary that is united or not, evident by the fact that it
I think it's not even, you see, every judge can make their own independent decision. I think they're entitled to do that. But for me, what was shocking is that this was not just any other judgment. It was, in one judgment, another judge is dressing down 2 other judges. Then in the other 2 judgments, the others are dressing down the other. So basically telling us, actually, you don't know the law, I know the law better than you. That was so sad. I felt it was sickening.
But one would argue that, you know, from a lawyer's perspective, the thing is to literally quote the law. It's not me saying it, but it's the law saying this.
Yes,
it
but you know,
like a this one, between judges,
but this one looked, no, this
law.
was not addressing the law, actually. It was basically, some of the judgments were actually saying, castigating the decision of the Chief Justice, the way he undertook something. Yeah, and then they were defending themselves. One is saying, no, I was on duty. The other is saying, I was not on duty. You were not on duty. I mean, it didn't look nice. I wish that hadn't come to the fore. Yes, because
was there a way of avoiding it coming to the fore? Because sometimes,
I think with a good leader and a good president of the Supreme Court, you should be able to get that. And I think we have a lot of hope in Kenya now that William Mutunga is out of the way, because he's the divisive person. Smoking Wanjala is a brilliant judge. Muhammad Ibrahim is a brilliant judge.
Why do you say that the Chief Justice, former Chief Justice is divisive?
You see, he never managed to have an opportunity to be able to bring the team together, work with them. I mean, even look at the way he carried on the Tunoi issue. How do you go and make an announcement on public television that your colleague received 200 million shillings bribe when investigations have not even begun? And then you use someone who's not even permitted by the law to do investigations on judges, who is a young magistrate, to investigate, and then you don't even write formally to NIS. Instead, you call your friend who is in NIS and introduce him to your spanner boy and tell him to go and continue to go and get some investigation on the judge. I think that sinks so low, because if you're a respectful leader, this is your colleague who has served for 30 years or 40 years in the court system, highly respected judge and lawyer. Go to him and say, I hear that these allegations against you. What do you have to say for yourself? And then inform him that I'm going to forward it to the Judicial Service Commission for investigation. But don't do clandestine activities of your own personal investigation, which is not even anchored in law. And Feroz Norji has raised that they are not permitted to do that. And now it's become a circus. And then it turns out that your own lawyer, who was the JSC lawyer who was in the retirement case, is the one who drafted the affidavit, you know, for the person who's allegedly saying that he saw the 200 million shillings being exchanged. It's a circus. I wish we didn't have to see that, because it makes me worry as a Kenyan that if they can't even do basic things neatly, I think
and you put that responsibility purely on the Chief Justice.
Yes.
He's the one who's responsible for that. Okay, from
because it was not the JSC who initially investigated. It was him and Kennedy Bidali
who did that. Moving away from that, but looking still at the Chief Justice, is there any good that you can say he has done?
I think he made, you know, the judges feel, I mean, like more accessibility in terms of humility. People didn't become so scared of the judiciary anymore. So he demystified it in that sense. And I think he oversaw because I remember the law was changed immediately before then to allow more judges, and I think to be in the bench, and I think he oversaw that well, and I think that went well. Yeah.
Okay.
And but in terms of actually, as a leader, bringing a team together and trying to get them to move in one direction and to avoid acrimony. Can you imagine having a father in your home who's always getting the kids to fight?
That would be sad if
And
that be true.
Yes.
Do you think it was a good thing that he retired 1 year before time?
He did not retire 1 year before
Why
time.
do you say that?
I think this story has been said so many times, and I think it was the Nation media group, and I think also the Star did write about it.
When is his time due?
The truth is, Willie Mutunga was born in 1946, according to his passport, for which he produced his birth certificate, okay?
Mm-hmm.
His
National identification card.
National ID card says 1947.
Mm-hmm.
And this was common knowledge when we were there at the Judiciary.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even, I think there was later findings, I think, by some of the media houses that there was in fact a letter that he wrote in 1985 to immigration to correct that my date of birth is 1946. So even that, just tell us the truth. He was, or say that 1947 is a fake one and the correct one is 1940.
So in short, what you're saying is that his retirement was already due because of his age.
Yes, and those documents are in the public domain.
Okay,
yes.
So are you saying that it's a fallacy we're imagining or believing?
Yes,
in
I
that
think
he's
it is.
retiring a year
I think it's a
earlier?
story they've told, and they managed to spin it and get everyone saying it. He's not retiring a year early.
And you stand
And if
by
you
that?
yes, and in fact, if you check his interview when he was interviewed by JSC, what date did he say he was born?
1946.
Exactly.
Okay.
So when did that change? When did he become 47?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so why do you think then that he would want to make us believe that he is quitting?
I don't understand. I look at it and I say, God, why would anybody behave like that?
Mm-hmm.
You don't expect a 70-year-old man to lie about his age, do you?
Okay, let's now move on to possibly your future ambitions. Do you see yourself as Chief Justice of Kenya? Would you consider?
No, I don't know. Not at the moment.
Why not? After all, you've got so many things that you can pick at which Chief Justice Willie Mutunga did not do right. Mm-hmm. Why don't you then step up to the call and do that, which is right?
No, I think, yes, I'm not saying I'm not qualified. I'm definitely qualified, I know that. But I also think that there's many judges out there and lawyers who are quite capable. I mean, there are many capable Kenyans. And I'm just hoping to God that JSC is going to be very careful to make sure that this time we get a Chief Justice that is not like Willie Mutunga. Let's get a Chief Justice who is a leader, a Chief Justice who puts people together, a Chief Justice that is going to get collegiality. I mean, I've looked at the functioning of the High Court and the functioning of the Court of Appeal. It's impressive, Mm-hmm. And it's because they've also got good leadership within there. Mm-hmm. I think they've got a good collegiality that is going very well. And I think the Supreme Court needs that more than ever. The Supreme Court needs that.
But since you know they need that and you seem to know how it can be done, why don't you throw your heart into it and, hopefully if they select you, then we can have a Chief Justice who will make that revolution that
I've had almost 3 years of thinking of what I would like to do. Mm-hmm. And
that is not an area you want to go into?
Yes, not at the moment.
Maybe later.
Unless something happens, I don't know. I never say never, but...
Okay. So what are your plans in the future? What are you planning to do? I've seen that you have some peace caravans that you've been carrying. What are your plans in the future?
No, I mean, for me, what I've used this time is also a learning experience to go into many things that I hadn't done before. Mm-hmm. So I mean, a lot of work in volunteering in Kibera, talking to young people, finding out what are the challenges in our country, because I'm going to find something that I'll do that I can make a difference. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think for me, just joining Kennedy Odeda on the peace rally in Kibera was a great thing, because I listened to people there and they said, we get interrupted whenever there's any violence or any demonstrations, and we are concerned about it. And we told them, you have to start preaching peace yourselves and saying, we are not going to be used and we are not going to get involved in this, and we are not going to allow tear gas to come to our homes. Because IEBC officers are not in. Kibera.
All right, so would you
so
consider...
for me, it's all that listening to different voices, listening to people, putting my head on the ground is going to help me formulate it better. So let me not say it, but I promise you I'll tell you when I'm ready.
You'll let us know when you're ready.
Yes.
So would you consider going back into the judiciary before I come back to this other? Would you consider, even if it's not CJ?
No.
You'd not? That's
I think
not an option for you.
my life has moved differently.
Okay. Are you considering an elective post?
I think because even if I went there, I won't have the energy and the, you know. And I think some things have to be sorted.
After all, your reputation, like you started by saying, is still intact. And as a result, Kenyans are meant to be looking at people who are reputable. So really, you should not allow, if they are just out to ruin your reputation, that should not stop you from doing what you need to do.
No, I think the thing is also that you don't want to go to a place where there'll be other people that that use that fact that you've gone there to make work more difficult, you know. I could still contribute in the justice sector without necessarily being in the
judiciary.
Yes.
Okay, are you considering an elective post come 2017?
That's also in the books.
Okay.
Yes.
Which area perhaps would you let us know?
Yes, Wasingishu, Elgeyo Marakwet, those are my 2 counties.
Okay, and what post are you looking at going for? Is it governor, gubernatorial?
There's a lot of research going on about that now.
This is an opportunity, Madam Gladys Boss Shollei, to let the people know what you have to offer them.
When I make my announcement, it's going to be big.
Okay.
And you will all know about it.
So we wait for the launch?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
would you know which party you're going to be affiliated to?
That's why you speak to people on the ground, yeah? Because remember, they're the ones who elect you. And they're the ones who usually, I mean, you've got to make sure that this is what they want, the party that they want, but also the party that you believe in, the same ideals as.
Yes, what happened to the ideologies and the fact that a party should drive a certain agenda that you believe in rather than just going into a party just to be elected?
No. The thing is, because you're representing people, you're not representing yourself. Yeah, so you need to represent them. And sometimes you may have to convince them that maybe this is not the party to go to, but maybe we can go to this other party because it's better for us. I'll have to convince them that it's going to improve their lives or make an impact in the county and so on. So yes, I will. I'm doing a lot of work on that.
You're researching.
And I think if I say it, it's unfair to all the hardworking people who are doing the groundwork down there and giving me the feedback. So let me give them a chance, because it will look like I'm already making up my mind without. Okay, what is the point of doing all this consultation?
But you are considering an elective post come 2017?
Yes, that's part of it.
That's part of what you want to do. All right, and finally, as we wind up, what do you foresee come 2017, especially given what was happening with the hate speech and all that? What would you say to leaders right now? Since maybe you're going to be throwing your hat as well, what is your message to Kenyans?
And I think for me, and this is a message that we had this weekend in Kibera, which is that, remember, all those people who incite you will be safely in their homes. And you're the ones who bear the brunt of all this violence. So the moment people begin to realize it's us who have everything to lose, then they will begin to not listen to them. In fact, I think the way to deal with hate speech and incitement and to violence and all is actually by when people don't listen to them anymore. Because the only reason why people listen to them is because they have a following.
They have a following.
But when we begin to tell people, don't do it, it doesn't help us, it's us who will suffer. It's the way I've always told people. When I used to work at the Electoral Commission, I used to tell my team, this election has to work smoothly. Right. Why? I am going to be in the soup kitchen as a refugee with my children. And the rest of all these people probably will be in army uniforms, having guns. And I always tell people it's women and children who eventually suffer most.
All right, we'll have to wind it up right there because of time. Thank you very much, Madam Gladys Boss Shollei, former registrar for the judiciary and our person of interest today. Definitely a lot to learn from right there. And should you go for the elective post, we wish you all the best. We certainly will feature you right here on Morning Express at a later time. And if that happens, you let us know which way to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we'll wind it up right there, but do stay with us right here on Morning Express. We've got some news updates coming up. Then later on Your Money Today, we'll be looking at public speaking. And when you're called for that interview or when you're trying to clinch that deal with a certain corporate, what are some of the do's and don'ts? Do stay with us right here on Morning Express.